Again, this is new year, new org, new me. And in this session, we are going to be talking about the newness of the year. It is fall semester. We have the biggest class of incoming students coming in the past couple years. And we have new people who have joined the executive board. So this session is really going to be talking about tips, tools, but also some leadership theories to really help you maximize how you can create a successful semester with all the newness that's coming on with the academic year. So let's start off with today's session. So today we're going to really be talking about the relational model of leadership. That is our first area we'll talk about. And we'll go into knowing, being, doing model, which will kind of lead you into some practical steps at the end, but also talking about some membership types, which is going to be important because we have a lot of new people coming to campus this fall. So the leadership process is not about things, it's about people. The purpose and intent of this presentation is for myself to give you all a model for leadership. There are different types of leaderships, the way a person chooses to lead, and relational leadership is one. And this quote is from the book that I used to build this presentation. So the leadership process is not about things, it's about people. And that's really the basis and the foundation of the relational model of leadership. It's about how you interact with each other. And we'll get into a little bit more of some of those other components in this presentation. The relational model of leadership. So this is a picture from, I want to say, last year's involvement fair, which I think a lot of your student organizations are going to be very excited to be a part of. It's an active day, and it's really beautiful to see everyone come together. So this is an image from that. The fall one is going to be outside for anyone who is in the group who is new. So we do the fall typically outside and then the spring inside, but nonetheless, all of this fun is happening on September 6th. So this is a depiction of the relational model of leadership. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of this, but what I really want to point out is that purpose is at the middle. Why does your organization exist? What is your mission statement? What is your value statement? We're talking about how we relate to one another in a group, in a family, in an organizational structure. Purpose really should be at the center of it if we're basing our leadership model off of the relational model. And so when we're talking about the relational model, there's 5 components, purpose being the middle, but there's also inclusive, empowering, ethical, and then the overall process of how we relate to each other. Again, not going to go super deep into this. You'll actually be using the second model a little bit more from my presentation, but it is something great to know. If you want to learn more, come to Tigers Lead Tier 2. So knowing, being, and doing. So what this really is a model. I will say when it comes to knowing, step 1, in order to understand yourself, your organization, and other views in the fact that they exist, right? Being, when we're talking about being, we're talking about being ethical, being principled, being authentic, being open, and also being inclusive. And then doing is the togetherness mindset. So when we are talking about knowing, being, and doing, we're talking about practical ways for us to have the conversation about relational leadership. First knowing, then being, and then doing. Which brings us to the first question of knowing. So I came up with this little quote here: awareness brings awareness. And that's really what it's about. For those who feel comfortable to share, I would love for you to answer this question in the chat. What do I believe leadership to be? Do you have a personal definition of leadership that you would love to share? I'd love to hear it from anyone in the chat. Oh, I'm going to shop my screen here really quickly. Sorry, everyone. I did not realize we were showing a different view. Let me share again. All right, I'm gonna share again. Let me know how it comes up for everyone if it is full screen. Is everyone seeing my screen fully, just the presentation, nothing else? Reactions. Let me see. Perfect, thank you. Awesome. So going back to the chat, if I could get some reactions about what do I believe leadership to be? And so this is an actual question for you to have with yourself, but I'm curious, you can either come off mute, or if you want to type in the chat, what do you believe leadership to be? Where does that come from? Nathan is saying leadership is knowing when to take the wheel and when it is good idea to let someone else go on their own. I think you'd probably be an advocate for relational leadership. Awesome. Thank you for that definition, Nathan. Anyone else want to add to the chat what they believe leadership to be? How do you define leadership? No worries here. And then when we're talking about knowing yourself, another component is what has influenced how I define leadership. So each of us have different backgrounds, come from different parts of the country, or if we're even from this country at all. And so leadership is defined through our own personal experiences. And so knowing yourself is really having a conversation of what has influenced how I define leadership. You could come from a very structured dynamic growing up where leadership is, very hierarchy based. You could come from a background where things are very fluid. So leadership is a collaborative effort. And so when we're talking about the knowing, that first level of knowing is knowing yourself and having these conversations with yourself in order to prepare for where we're going with this new year, new organization, new executive board, new members. Oh, we got some other definitions in the chat. Want to acknowledge those. Someone who keeps the team working efficiently and effectively. Thank you, Sean. To give others an opportunity to help in the community and building around a hobby or idea. I like that. Thank you so much, P.S. Young. The second really important question that we're talking about is knowing your organization. So I know when we started the first session, there were a lot of ones in the chat, right, that are saying that you all are new to maybe being on the executive board for your organizations. But I think it really comes down to these key two questions. What is your organization most known for? Why were you interested in your organization, right? There was something about what it's known for, how it was presented, that really engaged you of, oh, I want to join that club. I want to join that work. I want to be a part of that group. But also, I'm assuming, making an assumption that, majority of us here are executive board members. So having that conversation of what didn't go really well last year, or what went really well last year, when we're talking about knowing our organization, it's figuring out the ways that we can grow, the things that maybe, didn't go as great last year as planned because things came up, we troubleshooted all of these components. And so these two questions are really going to be the basis of knowing your organization and having that, realistic conversation with yourself about where your organization is, what are you all known for, what attracts people to your organization, and then we're kind of going to the next one. So I'm going to ask that people in the chat tell me, who is the focal point of this picture? No wrong answer. Who's the focal point of this picture? The woman with the blonde hair. Okay. Thank you, Nathan. The girl standing front and center. Okay. The woman in the white shirt to me. Okay, Brianna. Awesome. So this is actually a picture bringing up the involvement fair again, the student asking questions. Okay, that's funny. That's me in the picture. But nonetheless, thank you for saying I look like a student. But this is another picture from the involvement fair last year. And what I really want to emphasize here, I think Brianna kind of brought it up. Everyone has different views. Other views exist when we're talking about the knowing you have about yourself and your organization, but also the knowing that someone else has about the organization. As you know, as an executive board, as you all start meeting and having conversations about where you want to go this year, what are your goals, understanding and knowing that other views exist, right? So whereas, you know, many of you thought, this is our former GA, many of you thought Jordan, right here was the focal point of the picture. There are some that saw me, not the student, but me, as the focal point of the picture. And that's really the key point here, is that understanding that you have your viewpoint, but other viewpoints exist. The photographer could easily say, you know, the room is the focal point of the picture, and that's the reason they decided to take the picture. So understanding that and knowing that other viewpoints exist in order to have healthy and productive conversations for this coming year. Which leads us into our next thing of being. So knowing, being, doing. When we're talking about being inclusive, being ethical, I will say that it really takes a high level of self-awareness. It is a skill being an inclusive leader, being an ethical leader, and practice. And so one of the things, it's complex to have a conversation about how to be ethical and inclusive in this time. And so what I really want to do is highlight it, but also give you a tool. So Tigers Lead workshops, joining the program, joining Tier 1. There are, I would say, 3 workshops that really give you the opportunity to, 1, be self-aware, 2, skill build, but also practice some of these concepts of ethical leadership, inclusivity. Are you a leader? Being 1, leading in a diverse world and leading with value. What I really want you to take the most from this when we're talking about being inclusive and ethical, and also principled, 1, your values matter, but 2, having that time to sit down and figure out what all of this means is important, which is why I referred you all to the program, Tigers Lead, in order to have that conversation with yourself if you have not yet. If you have already, participated in the program and have had some of these workshops, I think anyone will tell you that the amount of reflection that you do in Tigers Lead workshops is super, super important to understanding who you are as a leader, how you relate in your club and organization, and how you relate in life in general, right? Because it's not necessarily just about leading a group, but it's about being a productive member of society. Being authentic and open. So I will acknowledge that this may not necessarily be easy for many people. And I will say it's also on the side of skill building, as I notated, for being ethical and principled. But what I would advocate for is that you really consider your level of comfort when we're talking about being authentic and open, because it is something that, some people are not naturally, accustomed to. And so that is something to keep in mind when we're talking about being, as we move towards a new year, a new semester, new friends, new members, new experiences, things of the sort. And then last, but definitely not least, the doing portion. So as we, have had the conversation about relational leadership, there's this idea of the purpose is in the middle. And so as we move towards keeping community at the forefront, but also, you are an organization that is a part of a bigger community of Towson University. And so when we are talking about the doing portion, where we move towards, integrating and opening and, offering opportunities for us to connect as an executive board or with new members, really keeping community at the forefront, but also being socially responsible about what that looks like. And so, considering that you are a part of a bigger community, the Towson community, but also recognize that you're representing each other. Kind of going back to that first question of knowing of what does my organization represent, right? We are all here for some type of commonality. And so understanding that you're representing each other with the events you put on, the meetings you have, the committees that you create. And so that's something to keep in the forefront as well. So the fun part, I'm actually very curious. I know I don't know if anyone came in a little bit later, but we're talking about reaction. And so I'm a person that responds to reactions when I'm doing Zoom presentations. So just curious, who in this space is a member versus an executive board member, just a general board member of an organization? If you want to put it in the chat or react, I am opening my screen so I can see. Do we have any general board members here in the room right now? All executive board, look at you leaders. Love it. Okay. Not seeing any in here. Awesome. Okay. Well, the reason I asked really is because when we're talking about members, I don't want to offend anyone. When we're talking about members, what we're really talking about, and we're relating into the relational model of leadership, we have this paradigm of relationship versus involvement. And what I have here depicted are the quadrants. And I know we all have examples of each of this, whether it is a group, whether it's a group project in a class, whether it's a family. We all have those people who are very great at building relationships with people within the organization, and also really great with being involved, right? High relationship, high involvement. We definitely know those people who they come around and everyone is just in good spirits, right? There's also some of these things that are high relationship, low involvement, right? So maybe that's someone who is, really great relationships with so many of the members, but maybe can't be involved in the same way that they used to, right? Maybe they're a senior, they have internships, things of the sorts, or maybe that's just their personality. They love the organization, they love what it stands for, but they maybe haven't figured out what their fit necessarily is. Then we have in this other quadrant here, our lower quadrant here, this should say relationship, high relationship, low involvement. This is a typo, but this should be high relationship, high involvement. And so, those different groups that we have of the people that we're going to interact with, the people we're going to be working with as new members join your organization, the people that you're going to be exposed to, or the people that are already a part of your organizations. I will say these exist in any group structures. We have those in class presentations. We have the group, we have the person that's going to take charge and, reach out to everybody and get the group started. And then we have someone who may not necessarily do the same, right? And so this is a visual depiction of what it looks like when we're talking about the members that are already a part of our organizations, but also keeping in mind the members that are going to be joining our organizations, right? What I will say, we're going to be moving into the practical tips. It is not necessarily your position to change anyone. But what we really want to look at is that, if we're looking to get new members that are in this quadrant of high relationship, high involvement, we really have to focus on both the relationship piece and the involvement piece. And that's what we're kind of going to go into. But when we're talking about these membership types, it's important to know and understand, because then you can really strategize how do we work with this, right? How do we work with someone who has low engagement, but high relationship? How do we get them in the side of, more involvement within the organization? Which brings us to our practical point of the presentation. So new year, old players. Sorry to tell y'all are all the old players, right? You've been a part of these student organizations already, maybe for one semester, maybe for more than one. But this slide is really going to be for our new executive board members and our returning members, right? So when we're talking about ways to use the relational model of leadership to push revitalizing it for the new year, icebreakers are going to be your best friend. Bonding sessions, intentional questions. I did a presentation over the summer with some of the OL leaders about the importance of questions, and not just basic level questions of like, how are you, right? So when we're talking about, your retreats as an executive board, your first meeting, if you maybe have had them already, but if maybe you have some other meetings coming up, what was something you look forward to this summer that you weren't able to do, right? Something that's not just a very straightforward answer of like, how was your summer? Oh, it was good, right? Anyone can tell you that, or, oh, it's bad, or, oh, I was busy, I worked, right? But those deeper level questions where you can kind of get to, understanding a person a little bit more, understanding their experience. Similarly, did you try anything new this summer, right? Maybe that first question is a little bit invasive. Maybe you're still new, everyone's new in the executive board. You kind of want to you want to get to know them, but you don't want to be intrusive. So did you try anything new this summer? Let's talk about that as a group. And those are some really great ways to engage and create a level of involvement in your personhood, who you are, what you experience, what you've done as a fellow group member or fellow executive board member. Also, competitions of the best summer adventure or internship story. This is going to be a great tool that you use as your returning members come back, right? Of having these, and I use competition. It can simply be a conversation. But when we're talking about involvement, maybe a competition is great. Maybe we have an Instagram challenge where, the person with the best story gets ice cream or gets to come to the executive board meeting. I don't know, depending on where you are in your package and financial means. But I just say that to say, involvement can look different ways. It can look like intentional conversations. It could also very much look like, making it fun and exciting and making a competition that everyone can engage in, because they know how the organization flows. They've been here previous semester. They are an old player, as I'm saying in this particular presentation. And so finding new and exciting ways for them to re-engage with the organization and to come back to the semester so that you all can have a great semester. Session for open ideas. So this is great for, I would think, executive board members, but also returning members. I know for me, over the summer, even if I was not in school, I was thinking about school stuff. Maybe not the academic side, but absolutely the social side, right? You may see a video that's like, oh, that's really cool. Let's say you're on a dance team and you see a routine that is like, it's fire, and you want to incorporate some of those things in your dance team. Having a session and creating space, as you all come back together as an executive board, or as you come back and reintegrate your members, having a conversation about like, okay, what did y'all see this summer? What are some things that we saw on the internet that we want to bring or incorporate into how we do things this year? And so having those intentional spaces to have those conversations. Now, if you're doing it as an executive board, it makes sense to do it at a meeting or something of the sorts. But if you're, opening this to returning members, you could easily start, a campaign. You can email us your ideas at, whatever your associated club email is. Instagram has a feature where you can post, people can anonymously answer things. You can post it, right? But really making that involvement in the direction of the organization and the club intentional, and opening it to people in a way that maybe you haven't utilized it before. or even bringing it to the general board meeting. So for the first meeting of the semester, hey, we're just going to take the first 30 minutes and just talk about, what new ideas people have. So really intentionally creating that space in order for you to create involvement, engagement with this new year and all the newness that is going to be coming with the fall semester. And then now we got New Year's new players. So none of you all are new players. But the key is to treat the new year as new ways to foster and improve relationship and level of involvement. I've been saying this a little bit indirectly, but as you move towards new members, again, this is going to be like one of the bigger classes that is coming into the university. So it's going to be a new semester for all of us, but sign up lists, right? So I'm assuming most of you are either going to be doing, welcome to TU, the Student Org Fest, or Involvement Fair. What do your sign up lists look like? Are they just give us your name and your email and we'll email you about our first event, you'll be on our newsletter? Or are there intentional ways to engage with the organization? Adding a question like, what is your favorite color? And then putting new members into color groups, right? So that they can intentionally network, right? Things like that are ways that you create a layer of involvement. Now, I will also say, I think everyone knows we've all been a freshman once. We come in and we want to do everything. So, there's that. It might not necessarily work for everyone, but you having some of those tactics that you can include to make it really personable for someone to join your organization and be engaged and, really foster that level of both relationship, right? Because now I know your favorite color, or now I know out of 4 options, which color you identify with the most, but also involvement, right? Because now I'm putting you in a group within our group for you to have, a buddy or, someone on the executive board you're paired with, however that looks like. I put social media use because I do believe a lot of platforms use it, but this also coincides with Involved at TU. But really having those system in place of, to try to engage members in a way that's other than very transactional, right? Because when we're talking about relational leadership, it really is about the relationship, how you foster it, how you build it. Really want to kind of remind everyone, especially as we're moving towards new members this fall. Thank you, Chris, for putting the link. So if anyone's doing open doors, there's a link. But as we're moving to a new semester where there's going to be so many people, it's essentially networking, right? So how you talk about your organization, how you engage someone, as you're, giving them the spiel, right? Everyone has their spiel of what their organization is and what they do. Getting new members to sign up is effective networking. And so in the same way, when you network, you may send a follow-up email, a touch point. Hey, it was really great meeting you at brunch. There's also some really great ways to use Involved at TU to do that. Are you doing membership shout outs? Hey, we have a listserv. Here's all our new members this week. Are you doing, utilizing social media, followers of the week, right? Because maybe at the table you want to get people to follow you. I don't know. Every organization is going to be different, but really just want to emphasize, utilizing some ways to create not just necessarily a transaction, but a relationship when we're talking about our new members that are coming in, our executive board members that are going to be coming back, our old members that are going to be coming back. Really want to make it exciting and engaging for everyone when we're talking about that. I'm going to pause really quick. Are there any questions? Okay. I'm not seeing any, but if you do have some, just pop it in the chat. Okay, just want to make sure we don't have any. Cool. So we're kind of getting to the end. I want to leave space for anyone to have questions or to run some things out loud as like a think tank. But really when we're talking about theory, so the relational model of leadership really is about relationships as the focal point of the leadership process. And although everyone has their different style of leadership, what I'm really pushing for is for you to adopt this in order for you to, engage your new semester, right? You don't have to use this in every way. Please go back to the leadership style that feels comfortable for you. But this is really just a tool for you to utilize as a board, right? A leadership theory style as a board to use to, open the campus to a new year with new members, with old members returning, and with each other. Relationship and involvement directly impact how members engage with an organization. So that quadrant that we were looking at, there's high relationship, there's low relationship, there's high involvement, there's low involvement, but figuring out where that one, it's going to be in every club or organization or family or organizational structure, right? You're going to have people that are great at relationships, great at being involved, not necessarily so great at relationship, but like great at being involved. They're going to be volunteering for all the events. But understanding that and kind of strategically strategizing, like, okay, where do we fall as an organization? Do we need to work on the relationship piece? Or do we need to work on the ways to like involve people through like some creative measures? And then the knowing, being, and doing model is a form of practice that can aid in addressing new executive boards and members. So you all are relatively new to each other, right? You may have seen each other or developed close bonds in previous semesters with your fellow executive board, but realistically, taking on an organization is a responsibility that may be new to at least one of you. And so really having the idea of knowing yourself, one, knowing your organization, knowing that others have different views, intentionally having that conversation about it, being, right? So that's what we're talking about, those ethical, principled, inclusive practices that you can have, and then doing what you all will do, right? As an organization for this new semester. And then just to recap some of the tips, right? You cannot control others' behavior. I'm not saying that if someone is low in involvement and low in relationship that you should kick them out of the club, right? But it really is for you to look at, okay, what ways can we increase the relationship portion? What ways can we increase the involvement portion? And that way, you're able to offer some opportunities for more engagement, a more cohesive group, with that purpose at the middle that we talked about earlier. Enhance the systems and tools you use to create high relationship, high involvement on the front end. So being super proactive now, I think Chris has reiterated it in some of his sessions, but being proactive now is the best time to do it. So even if you have not met as an executive board, I implore you all to touch base between now and, when the semester starts, because in order to, adapt and develop and create, great bonds to start you off for the new year, being effective and doing it as soon as possible is always going to be on your best interest. Always, always, always. More than meetings and events can be used to create relationship and involvement. And so as you kind of saw through my examples, and I'm sure there's some relevant examples to your own, utilizing Involve That TU as a tool, right? It's not necessarily just a social media account where you post your events, right? There are places where you have membership listservs. There are, places where you can email everyone in the organization, here are our new members of the week, however that looks like. But also utilizing your social media platforms if you have them. And if you don't have them, there are touch points that you have with the campus community that are great for you to go ahead and strategically engage and involve people on the front end. So whether that's Involve That TU and you're using QR code to get new members, and you're bringing in some personal touches to get to know them. There's ways across the board, but these are just some of the ones that I mentioned here that you will hopefully can utilize for your organizations. Thanks so much. I'm definitely wishing you all a great semester. Here is a QR code. Not sure if everyone is on their phone. It'll also be linked in the PowerPoint presentation. But if you are looking to join the program for Tigers Lead. And, you know, if you have concerns about, am I really an inclusive leader? Do I really, you know, have answers to those questions that, you know, I posed about, like, what is your idea of leadership? Where does it come from? I have the Tigers Lead QR code here that brings you to the Involved at TU page. That's going to have our full semester on there. We're still posting a couple more dates, but all of the workshops are listed there. Again, to kind of reiterate, it's 6 workshops to complete tier 1. But what I highlighted in this presentation are some of the ones that are the most relevant to this presentation. But you're more than welcome to come to any and all of them. But I'm also going to just take this time and open it up for questions, and I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, maybe there is a question in the chat. Oh, thank you, Jasmine. I'm going to pop it in the chat then. Let me stop sharing. Thank you, Bree. I'm going to pop it in the chat and I'm going to stop recording. So if anyone has any questions, unless it's a good question, maybe I should keep it on so someone else has access to it.
Cut the recording, cut the recording.
Okay.